Welcome. Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to Community Activated Advocacy Basics, an introduction to best practices for effective advocacy. My name is Tera Proby, and I serve as Director of Advocacy for the National Guild for Community Arts Education. So the first person that I'm going to have come on and speak is our Executive Director, Quanice Floyd, just so she can give everyone a warm welcome. And thank you again for being here.
Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday. I just wanted to say thank you all so much for attending. The Guild is back. Whoop, whoop. Let me see some claps in the chat. The Guild is back, everyone. Over the past 18 months, we have been on a visionary blueprint process. We call it a visionary blueprint, but it's really a strategic plan to really listen to what's going on the ground and support you all for the work of the Guild. So over the past 18 months, we've been going around the country. We've been listening to you. And one of the things that came out of those conversations is the fact that you all need support and resources for advocacy. So we wanted to make sure that we are aligning with the work and the things that you all are doing on the ground. And we're really, really excited to be back. I'm here to just welcome you all back to the Guild, the National Guild for Community Arts Education. And we will be having this series in January, February, and March. So be on the lookout for our upcoming workshops after this one. But just to kind of give us a sense of collectiveness, the Guild really, really strives to be a service organization. And as we move forward into our beautiful evolution, it's really about building up this collective movement, right? And so the reason that collective movement is so important is because change happens through pressure. And so one of the things that I learned in my own advocacy efforts and work is that we need pressure from the outside and we need pressure in the inside. And so the only way that this can happen is if that we bring this together, right? If we do this together and we do this collectively, our work is connected through all of this. So for the National Guild, our beautiful evolution is really about strengthening the impact and reach of community arts education across the country, about developing liberatory leadership through diverse backgrounds, leveraging advocacy efforts to inform policy and funding, and robustly supporting the development of human-centered and sustainable organizations. So we're doing this advocacy work as a part of the Guild. That is who we are now. That is becoming a staple of the Guild. And so during our conference, which will be in April, we will be doing fly-ins in Capitol Hill. We'll be advocating for community arts education. Now imagine this, we have 700 people coming to our conference, right? Imagine 700 people go through the doors of the Capitol in a good way, go through the doors of the Capitol, and we are advocating for our communities, right? We're advocating for the work that's happening for our communities. We're advocating for the holistic wellness and experience of humanity through the work that we do in community arts, right? Doesn't that sound beautiful? So I'm really excited for you all to join us in this journey. It's going to be a long, fun, challenging journey, but we are in this together. And so I'm going to just kind of ground us in some community agreements. As we have amazing speakers here, and Tera, who is our new Director of Advocacy, and many of you who will be rejoining us over the next couple of months and years to come, right? You all are staying with us, you're stuck with us. But just to understand that when we have conversations, to be fully present, right? To make sure that we are showing up for ourselves, showing up for our community, showing up for our colleagues. And we're also being brave, we're being vulnerable, we're being open. We know advocacy work is hard, right? I've sat in conversations that I was not necessarily comfortable in. Sorry, my brain is like moving at 1,000 miles an hour because I'm excited. But I've sat in spaces where I wasn't comfortable, but I knew that I was there for a reason, right? There was a mission and there was a vision that I have as making sure that I'm supporting my community. So in those spaces, I often have to be brave. I often have to be vulnerable, and I have to fight against those barriers, right? And that's what we're here to do together. We're here to support each other as we fight through each of these different barriers that we all are going to face together. We also hold grace for ourselves. This is a learning process, right? A lot of times, the arts has been very siloed in the work that we do when it comes to advocacy. So it's a lot of learning, right? We have to learn, and moving in this collectively is the best way for all of us to learn together. And then also deepen our understanding of complexities, right? We all don't have the answers, but we all can recognize that together we know a lot, right? And so holding and honoring questions for ourselves and for the work that we do is deeply important. So I just want you all to recognize that we're just really, really excited about our advocacy work. We're excited about all of the work that's coming down the pipeline for the Guild. I can't wait to share with you all some additional programs once we launch them. But it's really important that we are a part of these conversations, right? We have people who are making policies about ourselves and our communities without even listening to us. So we have to come together as a collective, as a people, as a community to really tell people this is why our work matters. This is why what we're doing in our community matters. And this is how what the arts does is building up this greater support for creating thriving citizens of this nation and this world, right? We want to thrive. We don't want people to survive in this ecosystem. We want people to thrive. So the Guild is here to fight for you, and we are here to fight for each other, right? And I'm not using fighting in a negative connotation. It takes determination. It takes heart. You have to do that. We have to do this together. It involves fighting, right? Because we know that there are systems of oppression that push against us, that push against our communities that we're trying to work with. And we have to be very adamant about moving this work forward. We have to be determined. Issues that come in the way, we are ready for it as a collective. So that is my piece. I really hope that you all learn a lot from Tera. I've learned so much from Tera since she started at the Guild. And if there's any questions that you all have, any additional resources, please feel free to reach out to us. We are always here for you. The Guild is a service organization, a service organization. We do not exist without you all. So please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you for coming. And I'll be passing it over back to Tera.
Thank you, Quanice, for that. And just again, to highlight what Quanice had to say, there's so much importance in arts education advocacy, that sense of collectivism when it comes to liberation and really effectuating that societal change that we need. So thank you again, Quanice. Thank you everyone for being here, and let's go ahead and get started. Next slide, please. So I really wanted to address this idea of how to even engage with your elected officials on a very basic level, right? So whether it's federal, state, or local level, what does it look like to even secure a meeting, right, with an elected official? So initially, it's all about scheduling a meeting. If you want to discuss specific policy issues, if there's laws, legislation on the books, or even something that you would like to see happen from your representative or your senator, it all comes down to scheduling that meeting with that respective office. Next slide, please. So again, that's going to be on the federal level, say U.S. House of Representatives or the United States Senate. State level kind of mirrors that same structure of having those two chambers. And then on the local level, it's going to be with your city council member. When it comes to scheduling the meeting, a lot of it is pre-planning, our elected officials, as much as they are working for us, they have very busy schedules. For example, on the federal level, a lot of times they're moving in between not just DC, but also their respective district offices. So it really comes down to understanding their calendars. So on a federal level, you're going to be looking at the congressional calendar. This is something that's public knowledge. You can, Google it, and it's easily accessible to anyone and everyone. On a state level, sometimes we call those like legislative periods, but it's the same sort of concept. And then city council session dates. But again, a lot of this is just pre-planning and making sure that you're getting ahead of that person's calendar. Next slide, please. So when it comes to scheduling the meeting, there's typically a point of contact in that elected's office. I know on the federal level, the scheduler is essentially that person's right hand. They manage their day-to-day. They're going to be handling not only their schedule in the DC office, but they're also handling their schedule in the district office. Sometimes there will be a district scheduler. There will be, a counterpart for that DC scheduler, but the scheduler is that first point of contact if you want to get to a member of Congress, right? Again, just to not reinvent the wheel, it's going to look relatively the same on the state and local level. They will typically have a legislative aide, or, there will be an aide for a council member, but there's always going to be a staffer who's going to have access to that elected official's respective calendar. So that's the person that you need to be reaching out to via email. Next slide, please. So when it comes to composing an email, I think a lot of times people get kind of caught up in the semantics of things, and they can get a little overwhelmed. But as with anything, it just comes down to basic professionalism, making sure that you're reaching out, you're introducing yourself, you're going to give your name, official title, maybe it's through your organization. Even if you're a constituent, I think that's something that you need to make note of, but definitely introducing yourself to that respective staffer who holds that person's calendar. You're going to briefly outline the meeting's purpose. And then you're going to provide a range of dates of availability. I would suggest strongly that you kind of leave it open-ended. Again, some of this comes down to flexibility and understanding that to some extent, you may be on that person's time as opposed to vice versa. And then follow-up is needed. Don't be afraid to send a follow-up email. Hey, just following up on my initial email, requesting a meeting. I'd like to check in and see where things are. Again, these are people who essentially work for us as elected officials and lawmakers of our country. So there's nothing wrong with, applying that pressure to get that meeting. Next slide, please. Okay, so a lot of times when you go into these meetings, again, there is a purpose in terms of maybe discussing specific legislation, or maybe you have an idea for a bill and you want to propose that idea. But I think a lot of this comes down to relationship building. When we look at year-round advocacy and the purpose of year-round advocacy, it really is about building that relationship, having that rapport with your lawmakers so that in the long run, if something does come up last minute, they will be receptive and you can help to advance those changes. Let's say there's a bill on the floor last minute, you want to move, your respective lawmaker to vote in a certain kind of way. If you already have that groundwork, that relationship that you've built with them throughout the year, that's something that you can help to effectuate. So I really stress the importance of relationship building, serving as that ultimate foundation to help move the conversation along throughout the year when it comes to advancing some of your advocacy efforts. Next slide, please. So what to bring to a meeting? When you are in these meetings, I think on a very basic level, just a pen and paper, you want to take some really good notes. But also understand that when you come to this conversation, I always tell people you are the expert. You are there to educate that lawmaker on their staff or their staff, on the issue that you want them to move the needle forward on. So don't be afraid to bring things like handouts. Typically in meetings like this, I've had leave behinds. You may have a one-pager that outlines specific policy issues that you want them to have some sort of action plan on or some sort of movement on. Again, a lot of it is getting into the mind frame that you know what you're talking about and you want them to hear you out, but also leave them something so that in the coming weeks, months, they have something that they can kind of filter through and they can have at the forefront of their mind when it comes to, say, marking up these bills or, introducing specific legislation. And then also don't be afraid to leave your contact information. If you have a business card, cell phone number, again, that's going towards the relationship building aspect of things. Build those relationships. As with anything else, you're exchanging contact information. Hey, maybe I can come meet you in the district office. We have some sort of event going on. Say if it's a member of Congress on the federal level, don't be afraid to build relationship, not just with the member, but also with their staff. Next slide, please. And then immediate follow-up. Again, don't be afraid to reach out following that meeting. Say you've left the office, you've given them the leave behind, go ahead and shoot them an email. Thank them for their time. Again, just basic professionalism in terms of how you would, handle anyone in the workplace. But also give them kind of a brief recap, discuss any other policy points you want to make them aware of, and then you can attach further handouts. And again, leave your contact information. You never know, they may reach out to you when they need for you to, weigh in on specific issues. Next slide, please. And then also, once again, just the relationship building aspect of things, you should always have some sort of consistent follow-up. Stay in touch with staff throughout the year, whether it's, the district office or the DC office, if it's on the federal level. Again, invite staff to district events for relationship purposes. Go ahead and attend events. A lot of times I know members of Congress, when they're in the district, and they're not here in DC and working on different things, they will hold their own events. They'll have things like town halls, or, they may go to things in the community. Do not be afraid to join them in that. I think that speaks volumes if you can definitely show up, I guess, what would be considered the off season, to build that relationship with your lawmakers. Also, if you see something, any current events, anything in the news, don't be afraid to weigh in on that. Shoot them an email. Hey, I saw this is going on. This kind of speaks to the last conversation that we had. So again, relationship building is the key. It's the foundation for everything. So do not be afraid to have that consistent follow-up. It's necessary. Next slide, please. Okay, and at this time, I will go ahead and have our first speaker come on. Her name is Marcela Garcia. She serves as Executive Director of Walker's Point Center for the Arts.
Thank you, Tera, for this great setup. Well, hello and saludos. My name is Xela Garcia. My pronouns are she, her, ella, and I'm wearing a cream turtleneck, a burgundy blazer, blue glasses, and my hair is in a ponytail. I am a proud Chicana, immigrant, bilingual and bicultural artist, writer, and cultural warrior. And I have the privilege of serving as the executive director of Walker's Point Center for the Arts, a nonprofit organization that's located in Milwaukee and is on the Menominee, Ho-Chunk, and Potawatomi land. Next slide. Next slide again. All right, so Walker's Point Center for the Arts is an organization that was founded in 1987 to provide quality art experiences to all people via our 3 tenets, which are art, community, and education. We serve over 6,000 people a year and build programs throughout the life cycle with a focus on uplifting youth, underrepresented artists, and voices. Next slide. In addition to leading this organization and being in the field for more than 7 years, I also serve on the City of Milwaukee Arts Board as a mayoral appointee, as well as a appointee by the governor to the Wisconsin Arts Board. So there, I chair the External Relations Committee, and most recently, I joined the National Association for State Art Agencies at the end of last year, where I will be engaging in more work at the federal, national level. But in 2021, I was elected to the school board for Milwaukee Public Schools. So all of my lived experience will help contextualize the conversation, and I will be drawing from my arts administration experience as well as my experience as an appointed and elected official. Next slide. So Wisconsin is 49th in the nation in per capita investment in the arts. So this has direct impact on the organizations like the one that I serve, as small organizations tend to be left out of funding opportunities, although they make up the majority of the ecosystem. So the inequitable distribution of resources also trickles into our school system. So in 2020, the Milwaukee School Board elicited the support of the public to raise $87 million via a referendum that would support career, technical programs, as well as expand our art, music, phy-ed, and language programs, as well as help build out the needed workforce to get this work done. The referendum got a whopping 78% support from constituents, and I'm happy to say that I was one of those voters that was in support. Next slide. So as the district geared up for receiving this money and adjusting to virtual learning and all things that came with COVID, I was approached to consider running for a seat in my district on this school board. So I did. I ran as an elected and to represent 65,000 students. We are the largest school district in Wisconsin and the district that has the highest percentage of English language learners. It's also the district that I attended and graduated from, and it reflects a community that has poured into my formation. Next slide. Because my journey has been non-traditional, a lot of the times they're like, what is an arts administrator like doing, running for office on a school board? But I think that those perspectives are, what I bring as an artist, as an arts administrator into the spaces have greatly impacted the way that I approach issues. So I see the importance of transdisciplinary and cross-sectoral collaborations. And as it's been said throughout this conversation, enacting social change does not happen in a silo. So in my work on the school board and as an advocate at the state level, I'm also charged with communicating the urgency as to why this work is worthy of sustaining. So the Wisconsin Arts Board right now is celebrating 50 years of investing in the imagination of communities. So as the chair of the External Relations Committee, I get to work alongside legislators. So the same folks that, refuse to adequately resource, these areas of our society. But I get to work with them to underscore and tell them the impact, the stories, and help interpret the numbers, the testimonies, the stories, the impact. And it's the relationships that we build, that has been underscored a lot throughout this conversation. But it's really about how we reach the hearts, minds, and souls of the folks to help them connect them to the issues that we are trying to, move. Next slide. So I cannot emphasize enough the importance of power building with and by communities. So let me say that again, with and by communities. So that as an advocate for increased funding for state art agencies, or whether we're advocating for school budgets, I have to remember that it's the people, it's the gente that are at the core of this work. And when I, especially, folks that are standing in multiple intersectional identities, enact our power, we will challenge the status quo and the hegemony that continues to historically harm our communities. So we must center the needs of the folks that are most impacted. Next slide. So I urge you to find ways to get plugged into efforts, organizations, or collectives that are doing movement work in one or all of these areas. So whether that's city, state, regionally, nationally, like the work that the National Guild for Community Arts Education is leading, map it out. Who are the folks in your ecosystem? Who are the decision makers? Who are the policy makers? And whatever table you get invited to or room that you get invited to, always ask the question, whose voices are represented? Which voices are absent? And how can we get, a better, fuller representation in the room? And that really starts by, holding elected O's accountable. So, as someone who holds that position, I want to hear from folks. So I can't, emphasize enough the fact that, yes, it can be a little scary, but these are, human beings, and as much as it can be a little intimidating, it's important to know that, you are the expert in what you are asking for. And I think many times as a community, especially, and intersectional marginalized identities, it becomes really overwhelming to feel like you can ask and demand, but we need to do it. So next slide. So thank you. I know these 5 minutes that I was given to speak with you all speaks at a very high level, but there is my contact email. There's also a QR code that can connect you to WPCA's work. And my hope is that, who knows, maybe this is a sign that someone in this virtual space needed to hear, to finally maybe even consider running for a seat or getting appointed to a committee, so that our voices of folks who have been doing the work can adequately be represented. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Xela. So at this time, I'm going to have our next speaker come on, Josiah, who serves as founder and CEO of Music Changing Lives.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. And what a dynamic speaker to come after. I'm honored to talk. Thank you to everyone that's joining us. My name is Josiah Bruny, CEO and founder of Music Changing Lives. I started this foundation 26 years ago on the premise of teaching at-risk youth how to own their intellectual properties through music and art. And I'm just honored to share space with you all and talk about my journey as an activist in my community here in Southern California. Um, we're based in the city of Riverside and San Bernardino counties. It's the two largest counties in the state. And we serve a geographic area also in LA County and even international waters in Haiti, Brazil, and now Yucatan, Mexico, and Tijuana. Next slide, please. So my thing is inclusive economics. As I mentioned in the beginning, our organization started on the premise of teaching individuals how to own their intellectual properties. I started in the music industry working under artists like Ice Cube, Master P at Priority Records. And so I learned what it was to be independent in this movement. And my hope was to teach artists that they could own their intellectual property and in this myth that we're a broke artist or that we could not be the leading factor in our entertainment world. Next slide, please. So what I mean by community first is basically in our community center programs. I came to the children first in our community and surveyed them and asked them what is it that they wanted. Of course, we wanted to teach them how to own their intellectual properties, but it was again asking them how or what arts they were interested in, what did they lack. And the first things that we heard, music studios were too expensive. Art labs did not exist at the time that we started. And so I started out this mission again 26 years ago, straight out of high school, to show individuals and to build these community centers for ourselves here in the Inland Empire. As most people know, LA and New York are the capitals of entertainment, but most of the music, a lot of people don't know, is broke here in the Inland Empire at our Orange Show and things like that. And the kids in these communities, after these artists left that are their favorite fan of, they didn't have anywhere to go to create their own spaces. And so that's what I do and did through elements like our Changing Lives Showcase, which is a nationwide competition for kids to compete free of charge to see who is the best at music and arts. Again, if you're an artist and you're a performer, you know there was the saying we had to pay to play back in the day, and I wanted to eliminate that. At our shows, they're free community concerts. The children are offered these services for free. We provide free instruction as well for their talent development at our community centers or at their school sites. Wherever we're welcomed, we bring the program. And now we've even created a creative aging scene thanks to the National Guild, where we serve our seniors and have our students go out and work in senior centers as well. Next slide, please. From this, we've also created our No Justice, No Peace mural tour. This was started during the pandemic. We were serving about 4,500 children at the time. And in March 2020, I remember it very vaguely or vividly, as we all do, we were told, go home and don't come back until we're told to. And so us as organizers that, again, we had so many students and so many school sites, we went to the surveys and we started asking the families what did they want. And so it started after the Breonna Taylor and George Floyd murder, to where we were hosting protests and speaking up about the injustice of police brutality, that we came to the site of saying we wanted to know what justice is and we want to know what peace is within ourselves. That's why we march. That's why we protest. And so we start doing that through art pieces and just start doing these murals across our city. And thus far, we've done now 52 revitalization projects through these art murals that has started a movement across the nation where artists are just speaking up and saying enough is enough. And we're going to speak through our art and show what we want through our showcase of that. Next slide, please. We also then, coming out of the pandemic, said, let's create a voice for youth and let's teach them through our State of the Youth Conference how to become advocates and how to know how to address their elected officials, but also how to build sustainable models. So through this 3-day conference for the last 2 years, we've been teaching kids financial literacy, self-time management, again, advocacy from state, local, and federal levels. And we don't just show it to them and then say, go do it on your own. We provide them mentors that will mentor them for the years after that they're engaged with us on how to lead these movements, so that we ensure that they're not shunned on and just thought of as, oh, that's pretty or oh, that's cute. And it continues on. Next slide, please. Then also throughout of the pandemic, through these surveys in our cities, in our region, we're known as what's called a food desert. And so a lot of families were going hungry. And so we created what's known as our Uptown San Bernardino Urban Garden. And this is a movement where we took one of the largest dump sites that was publicly owned, where people would just dump trash and litter, so much cars, all kind of junk, and we turned it now into a beautiful urban garden. And this is the first open urban garden that has no walls, no barriers, no time sets. It's open to everyone and anyone 24/7, and it hasn't been ran over or demolished by anyone. When we started, a lot of people thought we were crazy. They would keep asking us, "You're not being paid to do this. Why are you doing it?" And our response was, "Why not?" We wanted to teach health, wealth, fitness, self actualization, and most importantly, sustainability out of this garden. And we've done that and more thus far. And through our Soulful Sundays, where we meet every fourth Sunday with the community, we do 1 hour of volunteerism in the garden, and then another hour of education where we teach them something that we all want to learn. And then the third hour is us gathering together, playing music, doing art, and eating and combining and sharing bread and breaking bread together. And it's been thriving ever since as a community movement. Next slide, please. Again, I mentioned the 52 cities that we've revitalized. So I do service learning projects in these communities now where I teach individuals how to do what we do hand on, and we fast track it. The most knowledgeable, or not even knowledgeable, but the most loving project that comes to my heart is when we built a walk path for a senior center to be able to walk to their urban garden that they had. It had no rails, it was no ADA compliant, and it had been there for about 5 years, but the seniors were having issues with even getting to it. And it was really ran by young adults. And so we came and we built them a proper rail and railing, and now those seniors are able to enjoy their fruits and vegetables. And so those are the type projects that we do together, and it's all community led. We rarely go to the city for help unless we need just like permits or something like that. But again, this is all community led and community raised. Next slide, please. And then out of the pandemic, again, we created our hunger relief program where we took it into our hands alone and started distributing fresh organic produce to our families and also ending the carbon footprint of trash waste. I partnered with several different food distributions and wholesalers that would usually throw this produce away because it couldn't be sold to their consumers. And now we're able to sort through it. And it's called an 80/20 program, to where 20% of it isn't good, 80% of it is good. We just have to sort it and then distribute it. And so every Wednesday we meet, and together our community distributes this food to those in need. And it's again all community led. And thanks be to our team and volunteers, we've distributed over 7 million pounds of free, fresh, organic produce to our communities. And it's starting to expand to other cities as well to expand this model. Next slide, please. Concert Under the Stars. This is something else that was birthed through our surveying with the community. It's our first economic empowerment concert. Here in the Inland Empire, I don't know if most of you are from here, but we had a large issue that we heard coming down the pipeline of where street vending was going to be attacked. And as a former street vendor that started from selling CDs and all types of items out of the trunk of my car, I said, let's create a space where individuals can come vend for a cheap and affordable rate and also enjoy a free concert. So it merges both of our missions together in the city. And now we have economic development departments in the city working with us, and the colleges to update and give us free locations and serve the community. And again, this was all community led, and it's still free of charge. Thanks be to our sponsors and vendors. Next slide, please. So what's next? 1 million millionaires. We're building a million millionaires. Our goal is to set up and build EDCs in our community to where it's true economic development centers for urban artists, BIPOC community to learn how to become millionaires. I feel like the only power that is against us is the dollar. Our work ethics are higher. Our mentalities of love is more compassionate. And once we have the proper resources, we've proven over and over that we can change our communities. And so that's what we're doing. We're also hosting research projects with our community colleges to prove that we're moving the needle, so that we have data that the arts field could use to prove that this is proven models to change lives within our community and to keep it on. Next slide, please. Questions, opinions, or thoughts are welcomed. Again, I thank you so much, Quinice and the National Guild team, for this opportunity to speak. I met you all during Kaylee, and it is an honor to be with you today, saying that we actually did everything that we talked about in Kaylee, and we're living our dreams and just thriving. And so from my heart to yours, Ashe, I pray that all of your dreams come true, and know that you are enough. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Josiah, for giving that very, grassroots, community-based perspective to things. So next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. So at this time, I'm going to have Jamie Kasper come on. She serves as Director of the Arts Education Partnership.
Thanks, Tera. Appreciate it. Hey, everybody. Jamie Kasper, as Tera mentioned, Arts Education Partnership. Just to give you a little bit of information about AEP, if you don't know, Arts Education Partnership was founded in 1995 by our federal partners, the U.S. Department of Education and National Endowment for the Arts. Melissa, I cannot get it to advance, so can you take it back? Sorry, everybody, we're doing things in the background, and this is what happens. I'll give up remote control, and then maybe you can do it.
Yeah, let me see.
Awesome. Anyway, yes, there we go. Thank you. So as I mentioned, 1995, so we are in our going into our 29th year in existence. We are the largest federal investment in an arts education organization, and they have done that for 29 years. So we're talking about millions of dollars to support arts learning across the country. Our current home is within Education Commission of the States. And you can go ahead and advance, Lisette. Thank you. Great. I did want to talk a little bit about our team because we are a team of 6. And it's really important to me that you know who is doing the work. So Brady at the top left is our communications person. Deja and Mary lead our policy work, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. And then Crystal and Mitra lead our engagement work. And we're really happy to have all of them on board. And our federal partners in particular are always saying, you guys get so much done. And it is not me. It is all of the people that you see on the screen. Next, please. The other reason why we can do what we do is because of organizations like the National Guild and like some other folks who are with us today, like Cathedral Arts Project and like Leaders of Tomorrow Youth Center. We have over 200 partners and affiliates working in all aspects of arts education across the country, and we rely on them to help us figure out what's going on in communities, in rural communities, in urban communities, in suburban communities across the country, in large districts like Philadelphia that has 100,000 people and small districts where it's one building in the entire school district. We're really interested in what's going on in all of those settings. Next, please. I did want to pause here and say, we are the Arts Education Partnership, and I just talked about arts learning, and it's really important to me that you know that when I say arts education, I'm talking about everything. I'm talking about arts education and arts learning in homes and in communities and in schools. And the resources that I'm going to share with you today to hopefully fuel your advocacy are really focused across that spectrum. Next. So the first resource I want to share with you to help you prepare for meetings with legislators is Arts EdSearch. Arts EdSearch is our database of right now more than 300 studies on the impact of arts learning. This is searchable. Thanks, Quinice. This is searchable by audience. So arts learning impact and outcomes for young people, for educators, for others, in schools, in communities, in visual arts, in dance, in theater, in media arts. You can do lots of different filters and search that way. And then when you get to a study, It will have a blurb that summarizes the study and then some other pieces of information. So those blurbs are really great to print out or to compile, and maybe give to legislators if they're interested in those impacts. And Josiah, really interested to hear about the research that's going on in your organization and would love to find a way to get those studies into Arts EdSearch as well. Next, please. So speaking of the research in Arts EdSearch, we have this series called the Arts Count. So this is 4 different publications: Dance Counts, Music Matters, Theater Counts, and Visual Arts Matter. And what these publications do is they take those discipline-specific research studies and they synthesize them into publications. The great thing about these is they are trifolds and they are easy to print and they are beautiful, so they're nice to share. And then also there is a landing page called the Arts Count, where we took those 4 publications and synthesized outcomes that we saw across different disciplines. And that's kind of the overall pieces. What does research say about arts learning? And then what does research say about dance and music and theater and visual arts? We haven't yet done media arts because we're waiting to get a critical mass of research in that content area before we do that work. Next. This is another 1-pager that's really great to print if you're going to talk with legislators. So ArtScan is our database of arts education policies in 50 states, plus the District of Columbia, plus the Department of Defense education activity. So those Department of Defense schools across the world. ArtScan at a glance, which you see on your screen, shows which states have policies in specific areas, and the blanks are places where that state doesn't have a policy. But then you can also go into individual states and get the exact policy language that exists for those areas. And you can compare states as well. So for example, I live in Pennsylvania, and I didn't say it earlier, I am on the traditional ancestral lands of the Osage Nation. What you could do is I could go into Pennsylvania and I could also click on Maryland, West Virginia, and Ohio, which are about all half an hour from me, and I could see what those state policies are as well. Next. All right. Last one I want to share with you today is one that I think is important when we're talking about legislators, because not all legislators are really passionate about education, and not all legislators are really passionate about arts education. They have their own experiences and the things that they care about. And so we have this resource. And again, this is a 1-page front and back that's easy to print and share. That says, here's our policies around education, here are policies around arts, around health and human services, around juvenile justice, and then here's how they all work together to support young people, especially young people who are incarcerated or are transitioning back to their communities from incarceration. And sometimes, again, you've got legislators that might not care so much about education or arts education, but they do care a lot about health and human services, or they do care a lot about juvenile justice. And this is a publication that helps them weave together the things that we care about with the things that they care about. All right, last thing I want to share with you today is not a resource, but just a reminder. If you haven't signed up for our Arts Ed Digest, you can do that. This is our bi-weekly newsletter. We have AEP resources. Thanks, Roberta, that's really great. Oh, you were responding to Juanice's comment about running for office. I thought you were saying you were subscribed to Digest. That's all right. But AEP resources from the field, including the Guild and our other partners, job opportunities, and upcoming events related to arts education. So all of these resources are on our website, the website you saw earlier, aep-arts.org. And the resources are there, they are free. And if you're not a partner or affiliate yet, we could welcome you to apply to do that. And that info is on our website as well. All right, that's a lot, so I'm going to stop and turn it back to Tera.
Thank you, Jamie. So at this time, I wanted to open it up to our Q&A session. If there's anyone that has a question, please feel free to ask. I'd love for our speakers to weigh in on some of your questions that you may have. So let's see if there's any in the chat. Don't think we have any just yet. Okay, so I'll go ahead and just ask some questions. Josiah, I really appreciate this idea of collectivism and the on-the-ground work that you've been doing in your organization. One of the things that you mentioned that really stands out to me is this whole idea of having youth mentors, right? For federal, state, local level advocacy efforts. How important is it, do you think, that people get involved at a younger age as opposed to maybe waiting a little later to start, that advocacy work that's so necessary in our communities?
Yes, yes. So here in California, we're working with youth that are 16 years and older because they're trying to change when they can get engaged and vote, right? And to teach them, because I didn't even know this, at like 18, you can run for city council, you can run for your school board, things of this nature. And a lot of our students have great ideals and are great minds. So we want to teach them that they are the voice and that we are the people, and so I think a lot of people get that misconstrued. Someone said it earlier in the presentation. I think it was you that said the electeds work for us. But yes, even though they do have a busy schedule, we as the constituents need to learn how to get on their schedule, go to the scheduler's office, know how to talk to the individual that's involved and that is the staffer for arts because they have that. And then that was a beautiful tool that you presented, ma'am, where we can see what are the policies that they are believing in and now start holding them accountable. And we're doing things where for our councils that are running for council and office, it's come meet us in our spaces and talk to us. We're not going to come talk to you in your space. We'll host a community forum. We'll provide the space. We'll provide the questions. Come answer them. And that's what I think we all need to start doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So it looks like in the chat, Sandra, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Your question is, if you have just 15 minutes with a politician on an art advocacy day, what are key highlights to hit that are most impactful? So I can start off with this. I think key highlights would definitely be whatever your top policy priorities are, right? So again, maybe it's specific legislation you've been monitoring. If you're there, say with representing, an organization, maybe that organization is monitoring specific legislation that impacts their constituency. And again, just to reemphasize, some of the things I discussed, you can always follow up via email. Don't be afraid to include in any follow-up communications those things that you think you left out. I know having done this work, particularly on a federal level, a lot of times these members of Congress, you may not even meet with them, you'll meet with their staff, and you may only get, to your point, 15 minutes, and you have to meet outside of the office. They may not even have room inside the office. I've even held meetings, say at like the Dunkin' Donuts or a cafe that's downstairs, somewhere. So definitely be flexible, but do not be afraid to speak to what is most important at the top of your mind that you may have already listed and ready to go before you get to that meeting, but also make sure that when you follow up, you're adding those additional talking points so you can get everything in. So I can also let some of our other speakers maybe answer that question, but that to me is what sticks out.
Yeah, and if I could just add and kind of merge it with the importance of getting youth involved in, the advocacy work. And like I said, sometimes it can just be so overwhelming where you're like, oh my God, like this, like, where do I even start? And what I always tell people, start in your immediate like nexus, like if you are, like for young folks, like get involved in your like school government, start, really looking at ways that are providing you this opportunity to really look at, how systems and like rules and policies and all of that are impacting, like your experience, and I think that when you are able to speak and connect like the things that you've experienced, the things that you have, the thoughts that you have had, and pair it, I think Jamie, your organization does an amazing job at kind of helping kind of find the pathways of how do you connect like the person that is most moved by numbers this is the data. There's people who get lost in numbers, and it's all about like the stories. You have a story to tell, share that. I feel like that's probably the best asset that we have, because that's what you have lived through. It's your experience, and nobody can replicate that. And it's important that passion comes through as you're connecting, with these folks, because I think at the opening remarks that Juanes made, it's really centering on this, like the pressure. Diamonds are made through pressure, and that's what we're in search of, right?
Yeah, and if I can add, have your 30 seconds spilled down. Like Tara said, you're gonna have meetings in awkward places, so know what you want. I call it my toolbox, right? If you have a certain individual in front of you, they are actually a tool for you to create change. And also know you're not begging for support. A lot of us artists, we feel like if we're asking for help, that we're begging for help. No, you are changing the narrative in your community, and stand strong on that. And I love what I sit on the board for Californians for the Arts, and Julie Baker, the CEO, has taught us that as artists, we are second responders. So look at yourself as valuable as a first responder, because you come after the wave to bring healing, hope, love, joy, and that is so important. And so don't forget how important you are to this community and the world.
Thank you. Thank you both for that. So I am going to read out, it looks like we have one last question here. And I think Juanis answered it, yeah, in the chat, regarding any arts organizations that essentially have come together collectively to advocate for a bill, policy, or an issue, or maybe backed a specific politician in the past. And if we think that would be possible now, if so, would the guild be the one that organizes something like that? So it looks like Juanis has responded regarding current arts coalitions working on the federal level, which, yes, the guild is a part of, and also plugging state and local level organizers in the arts who support policy to push through. One other plug for the guild, I will say, with us building up our advocacy shop, we are definitely monitoring specific legislation from specific federal level electeds who sit on, say, like education and workforce committee, and who are part of like congressional arts caucus. So we have a very targeted approach with our year-round advocacy. There are some bills that we're monitoring and that we think are coming down the pike that we can definitely ask for, some sort of collective push. So I would definitely just ask people to be on the lookout when it comes to that from our team. In terms of any communications that we send out. So we'll definitely follow up specifically from the guild, but as Juanis mentioned, there are already coalitions and arts organizations that are doing that impactful work. So to close out our Q&A session, I'm going to bring Juanis back on to give some closing thoughts.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I just want to acknowledge Lisa Davis sent something to Josiah. So Josiah, I think Josiah just replied to it. So Lisa and Josiah, y'all will connect. And then I see something from Heber, and I don't want to but I just want to make sure, Heber, we'll respond to you via email. We're going to copy your question and then we'll respond to you. I just want to make sure that people's voices are not being lost in the chat, because I know I've been typing a lot in the chat. But there's so much information that has come from this conversation, and I'm really, really, really excited. And I want to thank the panelists for the amazing work that they do every day, for the amazing support of their communities, of arts education. And I just wanted to round us out with this takeaway, right? And so Xela brought up the fact that earlier I was talking about making pressure and diamonds, and then I saw Norberto talking about how they've run for political office. That is the key, right? We need organizers on the outside in our communities pushing for advocacy efforts, and we need people in key positions who understand the power of arts education and community arts, right? And so Juanis, National Guild hat off, because National Guild is a 501c3. I want to encourage you all to run for political office, right? I can't do that as National Guild, but I can do that as Quanese, right? Do not be afraid to do that. Do not be intimidated. We are here to help you, right? The Guild can help you all to a certain point legally. And so we are building up programs to make sure that you all have those resources if you are interested. We will be having programs. I'm letting you all know that. That is my goal, to get folks in those seats to help make change, and having folks who don't necessarily want to be in those seats, which I can understand, but on the outside helping push for that change as well. We need you all. This is an amazing opportunity for us to really shake things up. And there was a question earlier around, what do you talk to certain politicians about? One thing that I will tell you that I've done in my own lobbying work is that I've went to state leaders on the federal level. I worked at the state level. I went to state leaders and I didn't have an ask. I literally went to them just to talk about the arts and arts education. I told them, I brought people with us. We told stories about how arts education has impacted the lives of students. And the first thing they ask you when you go into those meetings is, what do you want? Because that's the first thing they're used to. But if you come in there with no ask immediately, and you're building a non-transactional relationship, that is critical, because they are human. Policymakers are human, just like you and I. So they want to build relationships with people, right? It doesn't have to always be an ask. It doesn't have to always be, what's it, quid quo pro, whatever that, that is. We want to build relationships with people because they are just as human as we are. They want to know what the impact of our work means. They want to see how it affects their constituents, right? So you don't necessarily have to go in there with an ask. I did a whole year of lobbying and just handing out Maryland state coloring books just to our state legislators with no ask, right? And then when they saw that and they recognized who I was, they came back to me and said, oh, we know this is the arts education person. Let me reach Quanese because this bill is getting ready to go through. They saw me as the expert because I had no ask. So just kind of making sure that you all are getting in those spaces and places, whether it's attending a school board meeting, whether it's going to a city council meeting, a township meeting, a HOA meeting, just get active, right? Just get active and understand what's going on in your community. So I just want to thank you all for attending. This workshop would not be possible without the Music Man Foundation. They are supporting the Guild's national advocacy efforts. And we hope that there'll be more opportunities for advocacy all around the country. So we're just getting started, y'all. So thank you so much. And I appreciate you all.